This week on the Computer Chronicles, we take you to Madrid for part 2 of our special coverage of the annual ETRE Computer Conference. We'll talk to Bill Gates about Windows 95 and the Microsoft Network. We'll show you a new practical application of virtual reality, workstation quality graphics running under Windows on a desktop PC, the latest in speech recognition technology, Esther Dyson on the future of Microsoft, and a possible challenger for Intel. All this and more on this special edition of the Computer Chronicles.
Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by Hewlett-Packard Personal Computers, developing PCs for business. Additional funding from the Software Publishers Association, providers of educational materials to help manage software. Don't copy that floppy.
The Internet was the hot topic at this year's ETRE conference, not only in the hallway discussions among CEOs, but also at the ETRE Technology Room, where small and large companies were showing off their newest products. Quarterdeck made a major leap in leaving behind its traditional image as a utilities company, with products like QEMM and DeskView, to become one of the hot new vendors of Internet web browsers. This is Quarterdeck Mosaic, a rewrite and upgrade of the original Mosaic. It has several nice features. You may be waiting for graphics to download, but Quarterdeck lets you see the text part of the pages while you're waiting for the graphics. It is essentially a multitasking browser that lets you view multiple windows on the net, looking at a web page, for example, while also keeping your eye on a Usenet newsgroup or an FTP process. Quarterdeck's Mosaic also provides advanced online file management. It's part of the new Internet suite of products. Quarterdeck also has introduced Web Server, software for setting up a website, and a new HTML authoring tool called Web Author. The whole look and feel of the web was being redefined here at ETRE. This is the new 3D game-style net interface from UB Networks. Pick your avatar to represent you and go exploring the World Wide Web by walking through doors and actually looking around for interesting stuff. This is another use of virtual reality, a practical use. Instead of just playing games with VR, a British company called Superscape is using VR technology to create workplace simulations. This is a manufacturing simulator that lets production line workers train without risking real mistakes online. This simulation trainer is being used by Motorola. Superscape has even developed a special VR mouse for use with the software and a virtual Mac for training workers on process control. Visual concepts were everywhere at ETRE. As information gets more and more complex, the ways of representing information are getting more and more graphical. This is WinMap and WinGIS from an Austrian company called Progis. The software lets you find things by looking for them visually rather than textually. The visual front end lets you into massive amounts of data that can be organized in graphical terms. Another interesting approach to visual databases was this new software product called Vineyard from Data Fellows Incorporated, a Finnish company. Vineyard lets you keep track of complex relationships with handy visual icons to identify the nature of the relationships. Data Fellows calls their software a visual information manager for workgroups. Graphics are also important, of course, for games, and as PCs struggle to compete with Sega and Sony as advanced game platforms, a startup company called NVIDIA has developed a powerful 3D graphics accelerator that brings arcade-style graphics to a Windows PC. Sega has already licensed the technology to port its Saturn games to the PC. The NVIDIA board can process 100 million pixels per second, offering silicon graphics quality pictures on a Pentium desktop. The NVIDIA accelerator board will sell for about $200. The other cutting-edge technology dominating this ETRE conference was speech recognition, still struggling to become a mainstream input option. But it looks like speech input may finally be for real. This is speech recognition technology developed by Lernout and Osby, a Belgian company. They offer speaker-independent, continuous speech recognition.
Schedule a meeting. I want the wake-up service.
All right. Please give me your room number.
17.
This technology is now being developed for interactive language learning software, for voice-activated banking systems, and for voice command automobile appliances. It's a lot safer to talk to your car than to fumble around looking for the right buttons. And speech recognition is a global phenomenon. Dragon Systems was demonstrating its new recognition technology that works in several foreign languages.
Notre conversation de ce matin, virgule.
This is a program called IdeaGen from CAC Research of Helsinki, Finland. CAC stands for Computer Aided Creativity. IdeaGen is brainstorming software that lets you explore new ideas in a structured format. The software is based on the groundbreaking research of Professor Vilko Virkala, a pioneer in the field of computer-assisted problem solving. It's primarily a management tool for creative thinking. IdeaGen recently won the Innovation Award at CeBIT, the world's largest technology trade show. Finally, how are they doing this? This is a new presentation projection system for computers that lets you actually click on objects on the screen to perform computer functions. The technology from a company called Proxima reads the reflection of the beams from a laser pointer through a series of mirrors and translates them into normal mouse clicks.
This is Puerta del Sol, one of the key shopping areas here in Madrid. And behind me, the store El Corte Inglés. It houses one of the largest computer stores here in the Spanish capital. And it was the site of a global ritual a couple of months ago, as they too opened their doors at midnight so that Spanish nerds could get in line and be the first to get their copies of Windows 95. Yes, Microsoft mania takes place here in Spain, just like it seems to everywhere else around the world.
But according to Bill Gates, the hype and hoopla associated with Windows 95 was more a statement about the growth of the computer industry than about the clout of Microsoft PR.
Well, it's nothing to do with us. It was completely unexpected that it would receive that kind of attention. I think it says a lot about the PC and what a key tool it's become. I think it says a lot about when you bring out a new generation operating system and you get not just Microsoft, but the hardware vendors and the software application vendors to join in and bring out a new level of capability in their products. That it's a big deal to the world, and it's bringing the business to a new generation.
It's now been many months since Windows 95 launched, and despite a few early bumps, Gates says customer feedback is good.
Well, we're taking over 20,000 calls a day, and we log every one of those calls. And there's no serious problems have emerged at all. So we're very pleased with that. This was the most tested product that's ever been put out. Not a perfect product, and that's why we beefed up the number of people we have on the phones and extended the hours of coverage. But it's beating our expectation in terms of smooth installs and the kind of reception that it's received.
Every software company here, even the biggest, was talking about Windows 95 and what it means for their applications business.
Our current product works very well in the Windows 95 environment. We will have a suite that is designed to use the new features later this year. And that's going into beta as we speak. So we think our timing is good this time, as opposed to some previous laggardness on our part. And really quite excited about the opportunities there. Now, Windows 95 certainly slowed the applications market for everyone this summer, including Microsoft. And so now that it's shipping and the question marks are removed, people can start making choices again.
The clout of Windows 95 was so great that for the first time in the history of the software business, applications were being written before a new operating system was actually launched.
Well, there's never been an operating system where people actually did a lot of development before the operating system shipped. Mostly people had a wait-and-see attitude in the past. Here, you have the majority of development resources in the industry devoted to Windows 95 way before it shipped. So you have a lot of products that have already come out, and almost all the products that count will be out before the end of the year. And so it's not just the end user features of Windows 95, it's those applications that will drive the adoption as well.
Even companies at the high end of the business, workstation and Unix-based companies like Sun Microsystems, have had to adjust their business strategies to take into account the dominance of the Windows platform.
We respect Microsoft very much. They have an incredible market position, obviously, nobody needs to say that. And we have to embrace Microsoft. And our strategy, which has really changed in the last 2 years, is to incorporate, for instance, Windows application capability on our desktop so we can run Microsoft Office in the Windows environment, to embrace from a systems management and network administration capability Windows desktops.
And Sun is no small company. In fact, without all the press and hype, Sun is now a $6 billion company with a growth rate last year of 26%, equal to that of Microsoft. But the Windows 95 bandwagon keeps rolling, and industry analyst Alex Vieux says it's just begun.
It goes without saying that Windows 95 in 96 will be what people expect of Windows 95. And we will see that happening. And I don't think that we can escape from the fact that everybody is developing for Windows 95, is releasing their product for Windows 95. So the big year for Windows 95 is not 95, but 96.
When they weren't talking about Windows 95 here at ETRE, they were talking about the Microsoft network and the possibility that Bill Gates would use his control of the desktop to dominate the online business also.
Then, of course, their natural desire was to say, wait a minute, I can leverage the desktop, and now the desktop being the dial tone to the network, then I can, of course, become the network. And that was, the natural reaction of Microsoft. And now Bill Gates, yesterday, I wouldn't not say surprised me, but in fact, I think was very, very clear about the fact that he had realized today that you cannot control the internet, and that in fact now the objective of the Microsoft network is to become more an online service.
The Microsoft view of MSN has changed dramatically, in part because of us, because we, in a sense, disabled their previous business strategy. Their previous business strategy was to essentially try to own the network and couple it with the Microsoft network. They call it MSN, but it's really a service. And the service at one point was intended to be a network as well, just like AOL, just like CompuServe, just like Prodigy. They've realized that they must unbundle that.
The sudden turnaround in the Microsoft view of MSN and the Internet was good news for most other software companies and their ability to compete in the new world of the Internet.
Well, I think partly that they are realizing the net is not owned by Microsoft and probably won't be. And they suddenly realized maybe there is no opportunity in word processing, and maybe it's not Microsoft's fault. And they see this whole net out there, which is basically open and free, and Microsoft is just starting out there too. So they've suddenly, instead of looking at Microsoft, they're looking in the same direction as Microsoft.
MSN, in fact, is still getting its feet wet in the online world, and Bill Gates says from Microsoft's point of view, it's just another new product.
Well, it's just like any new product area Microsoft gets into. Once we get in, we're serious about taking customer feedback and continuing to innovate. There's a lot of major improvements that come in even over the next few months. Nice thing about an online service is you can ship a new version every day. And so there'll be a lot of tuning, a lot to learn, but we're very serious about having that be value added on top of the internet and a major community.
But it was clear that the industry thought Bill Gates had blinked on the MSN question, accepting the fact that there was still one entity in the computer industry more powerful than Microsoft, the Internet.
Microsoft will certainly have a successful online service for its own products and its own services. I wouldn't take that away from them. They deserve that. But to own the whole network and to own all content and to be essentially the all-encompassing, most important everything, everywhere is ridiculous.
But while there was a sense of relief regarding the competitive battles in the online world, that wasn't the case when it came to talking about the applications software business.
I have never seen such a domination, even with in the IBM era, where you don't see any opportunity for the other players for the next 5 to 10 years. I don't see any. Because who can overcome the barrier to entry on the application business that we are facing today on the application side? In the operating system business, who can challenge Windows 95 and its derivative, NT and the others? I don't see anybody who can do that.
That's bullshit. I mean, forgive me, it's not an on-camera comment, I guess. But, you know, I totally disagree with the notion that Microsoft's size or market position prevents anybody from entering new markets.
When you're a Microsoft competitor, it does seem a daunting task to take on one of their product categories and try to stay alive in the desktop applications field. But if you're Microsoft, the world looks quite different, and Gates and company have their own fears.
You know, Microsoft is scared of really fundamental things, like how do we keep growing? How do we keep building people? How do we maintain our flexibility? How do we stop being complacent? Those, I mean, in the end, character is even more important than strategy. And I think they're worrying about the right thing, which is the character of the company as well as the strategy. Clearly, it's not going to be as easy to dominate the net, which is oriented around diversity, as it was to dominate the OS and the application world, which is oriented around standards.
But despite all the talk here of Microsoft's power in the software business, there is also a sense that the dominance of the MS-DOS and Windows platforms has really been good for the industry and good for the consumer.
One thing you really need to remember about Microsoft that I think is easy to forget in the face of a lot of current criticisms of the company is that if they had not had the success they did in becoming the dominant operating system for the IBM PC, the chances that we would have a PC industry of great a size and as much vitality as we do today would be very small. I mean, basically, Microsoft made possible the growth of a huge industry by being so good at what they do. That's a key thing to remember, and these people here generally all know that in their souls.
Usually any discussion of Microsoft's dominance in the software arena is followed by a moan and groan about Intel and its control of the hardware world. In fact, computer industry gurus have come up with the word Wintel to describe the Windows Intel dominance of the PC platform. On the hardware, CPU side, many analysts think that Intel's position is even stronger and perhaps more worrisome than that of Microsoft.
It is not healthy. Definitely it's not healthy. The least healthy situation is the one created by Intel. It is not healthy for networking, but there are other networking solutions on the WAN side, etc. And there are players, and because the equation is not frozen yet in networking business, Tricom, Cisco have enough of a size that they can compete with Novell. But in the microprocessor business, Intel is competing so much with against anybody who's trying to get some 10% of market share. They leave them no room, and I don't see any relief for them.
Intel controls the desktop CPU market with an almost 90% market share. It has several small competitors, including Cyrix, AMD, and NextGen, and the competitors think they can beat Intel if they come out with a better product.
Oh, absolutely, because it's a different paradigm from software. Software consists of features and content, and it has a loyalty associated with the continual use. Microprocessors manifest themselves as actually an engine which is hidden from the end user. The end user uses the applications. So if there is a processor that outperforms the Intel processor sustainably, it will definitely gain very significant market share. So the opportunity for taking market share away from Intel is easier in the case of microprocessors, even with Intel's huge campaign.
When it costs more than $1 billion to build a chip fabrication plant, you'd better have a good long-term strategy for staying on top in this business, and Intel has one.
What they want is that a lot of buyers buy products that use Intel products, which means that products using Intel microprocessors should be available at very low prices. How do you get low prices? You get low prices in an environment where there are a lot of competitors with essentially the same product. There's not much to distinguish between. The only difference is the name. It's Compact's name or Packard Bell's name. So Intel basically provides a means by which the companies that don't have name recognition can get name recognition by having the label of Intel inside on the outside. And by doing that, it also diminishes the value of the names of companies who have good name recognition. So all of the companies then have to compete on price. Brings the price down, increases the demand, simple elasticity of demand, and that's what Intel's grand strategy is.
But bottom line, Intel's competitors feel that Intel is not Microsoft, and as a hardware vendor, they are potentially more vulnerable to new competitive products.
Intel's position in the processor world is not quite what Microsoft's position is in the operating system or user interface world. Intel has competition, and Intel has competition that is indistinguishable from what Intel can provide. What Microsoft provides are capabilities and content and features. What Intel provides is a processing engine. And that processing engine is today distinguishable only by one feature, how fast it executes software.
But Alex Vieux disagrees. In his view, Intel's control of the CPU market is greater and more entrenched than Microsoft's control of the operating system market.
On the microprocessor business, if you look at it as such, there is no other player than Intel. And that, it's not very healthy. I'm very happy for Intel that the Department of Justice is not getting on their case. But if I were, I used to study law, and if I were in the Department of Justice, I would rather focus on Intel than on Microsoft.
With the Intel and Microsoft debate going hot and heavy, there wasn't a lot of talk here about Apple, Motorola, the Macintosh, or the PowerPC. So I asked Alex Vieux what he thought about the future of Apple.
I think that although I'm an Apple addict, I use Macintoshes all the time. In the next 2 years, we'll see a big transformation from the people who are using Apple because of Windows 95. You will have some converts, and they're going to switch. Just out of critical mass, or just because people are banging over their heads that it's not really serious to still continue to use a proprietary system which doesn't open up enough and fast enough, and for which Apple doesn't have the critical mass of customers, above all in the high-end and corporation. So I feel that Apple will have a tremendous challenge to remain in existence by year 2000. I'm sorry to be as blunt, but I would not bet my shirt that Apple will be there.
What about PowerPC? Can it knock off Intel? Next Gen's Atiq Raza doesn't think so.
PowerPC has turned out to be an excellent microprocessor for the Apple PC. Outside Apple, I find it difficult to believe that it's going to be able to penetrate the marketplace. Now, to the extent that they may be clones of Macintosh, and Macintosh is used as a more widespread operating system, it may gain some market momentum. But right now, the market momentum behind PCs made with the Intel microprocessor and the standards that are all coming around the x86 microprocessor and PCs based on x86 microprocessors is so rapid and so pervasive and so easily accepted by the marketplace that it'll be difficult for a change in that paradigm.
But it seemed clear here at ETRE that regardless of what happens with Intel or Microsoft, one paradigm is going through a major shift as a result of the ubiquitous computer and the growing power of the Internet. The very definition of economic value is once again going through a fundamental evolution.
Long ago, there was value in land and it produced food, and then there was value in machinery and equipment and factories, and if you like, money. That was a good store of value. Where the value is in the future is going to be in people's heads. And there's going to be two kinds of value. There's going to be, if you like, productive value, knowledge value. I know how to do something. And I get that through training and education. The second kind of value is brand value. I mean, take Microsoft. half the value of the Microsoft name isn't in Redmond, it's in the heads of millions of people around the world. And that's a huge value because for some crazy reason, people pay money because of that knowledge of Microsoft in their heads.
At the European Technology Roundtable, an exhibition in Madrid, I'm Stewart Cheifet for the Computer Chronicles.